Listen to me. Please listen. If you don't, if you won't, if you fail to understand, then the same incredible terror that's menacing me will strike at you!
Hey guys, hey, welcome to my channel. I just spent a couple of minutes thinking I was live. That's, I think, the second time I've done that, and it's happy that I noticed it before the whole hour ran out. Anyway, I'm here today.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm here today streaming to you from inside the Sound Fort, where I will be recording my audiobook. If you're wondering about, if you haven't already heard me talk about why I'm in this strange sort of cloth bunker. And I'm here today with Jeff Hawkins, my dear friend, who was responsible for the most successful marketing campaign in the history of Scientology. It brought a lot of people to Scientology. So how are you doing, Jeff?
I'm doing great, Mitch. Thanks so much for having me.
It's my pleasure, always. I want to start by just, for people who don't know, and I've had a chance to rehearse this once today, so I got it down pretty good. But for people that don't know, I was a film director. I worked for Scientology for 30 years. I was a Scientologist for 50 years. I met Jeff back in the mid 80s. They were looking for a television commercial producer, director, which is what I was doing at the time. I was a student at Celebrity Center. I was brought in to meet with Jeff, and I worked with him on his marketing I worked with him on the TV commercial part of his marketing campaign, which Jeff had designed an incredibly robust machine that handled not just the creative end of it, which I was involved in, but also the marketing end of it in terms of book distribution and media buying and all kinds of stuff. And so, Jeff, why don't you just tell us a little bit about your background?
Yes. Even before I got into Scientology, I had a background in advertising. I was a graphic designer. My father was an advertising man. He had an agency in Los Angeles called Studio Artists. And I had worked summers in his office. So I was pretty familiar with graphic design and creative work and that end of things. I had to learn the rest of it myself, which I did by self-study. When I was in Scientology, I studied media buying, I studied book distribution, and all of those things. I was really a self-taught guy within Scientology. And so then I was able to put all of this stuff together.
Yeah, okay, fantastic. Just a little technical note. My audio was not coming through my mic. It should be okay now, so please in the chat let me know. Yes, and Apostate Alex, you're right. I am apparently very PTS this morning. And I wouldn't put myself out there. Jeff, thank you so much for that. The reason that I want the audience, so our viewers, to really understand your background is because this curious campaign, which is the subject of our stream this morning, for me, it's still morning. I haven't woken up yet. So, but understanding this campaign, understanding this program, gives you a very a unique look into the mind of David Miscavige and how he runs marketing. So. I didn't work on that campaign. The last campaign I worked on was one which the slogan was "Welcome to the Age of Answers." Like that was my last thing, and then I was heavily focused just on making films. I wasn't working on marketing anymore, and I saw the Curious campaign rise up, sort of on my periphery, and I saw that sign on Sunset Boulevard at the complex. I saw that sign appear, and I know exactly why it happened and what the evolution of it was. But I would really like to have your viewpoint. Like, what was your observation as the person who had really designed the most effective marketing and advertising campaign Scientology had ever done?
Well, I'm always a bit trepidatious about criticizing Scientology's advertising because Napoleon once said, never interrupt your enemy when he's making a mistake.
Yeah, that's so true. But I think you could. I think you would agree with me, Jeff, that in this case, they are not. You could not interrupt them.
No.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
anything that
mean,
you would do, they would turn into. See, they really like us. Mitch and Jeff are talking about Scientology. I like
yeah.
spoiler alert. I don't want to give it away, but they would definitely turn that into a positive and go, no.
Oh, yeah.
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 So with
But
that great Napoleon quote, what was your impression?
I started seeing it in billboards. They had a billboard up in Portland that said "Curious," and I was kind of like, "What are they doing?" Because curious also means strange and unusual. The word curious, and I thought, why are they connecting Scientology with the word curious? Because people are gonna say, "Oh, Scientology is curious," meaning strange. So it just seemed like strange, very strange messaging.
Right. And here,
Go ahead.
yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, I was going to say that at the time I saw it, I was like, what were you thinking? I mean, I was very disgruntled. I got to turn that stuff off.
Oh yeah,
I haven't figured out how to do it yet. Well, I got a new MacBook Pro.
I don't have it.
Yeah, it's some new software thing they wired in there. Everything's going to be AI eventually. Eventually,
Oh,
your computer's just going to say, "Hey, Mitch, why don't you step aside? I got this. I'll do this
I'll handle
for you."
this whole.
Yeah. Just go do something human. Let us machines run the world. So, but anyway, it's when I saw the thing, and that was at a point where I was already very disgruntled with Scientology, just shortly after 2008, and I thought, well, if you actually surveyed, and I want to ask our viewers this to just in the chat, just comment, please. We're going to do a little survey right here, Jeff. We're going to do a marketing survey.
Good.
Okay, you can help me with this because you've done a lot more of these things than I have. So we're going to ask you, what's the first thing? And this is not going to be we don't have the right audience for a survey because we've already poisoned the waters and we already know why they're here. But nonetheless, I'm going to ask you to try to be like jurors on a trial. Be objective, just listen to the facts, put all your bias aside. And what do you think of when you hear the word curious? Because I thought of the second I saw that thing, I thought of two things. One, bi-curious, which was a really big sort of a thing that was going on when they came up with that. I'm like, when you said curious, it kind of meant, are you maybe curious about having an encounter with someone of your same sex? Like literally, at least where I was in LA, it was like if somebody said to you, hey, are you curious? That would imply that. And the other one was curiosity killed the cat. And these were the two main things that stuck in my mind. So curious. Okay, so I'm going to put up one comment now. I never usually do it during the stream till the end. Scott, aka CEO of Bilf, says curious is all I will say if I am ever next to Dave at a urinal. Okay. Okay, good. And we hope that if that happens, you'll report back to us because we would like to know all about that encounter. But yeah, so we've got we have a couple of is my audio okay? I don't know what the heck's going on here, but it should be. Jeff, you got me okay?
I'm hearing you fine. Yeah.
Oh, okay, good. So we have, look at this. We have April Amsterdam. She says bi-curious. She's got that one. And come on, guys, we need you to fill in our survey here. We want to know, what do you think of when you hear curious? Okay. So while they're coming up with their answer, let's just talk about how you could have public opinion so against a group, so much public opinion, and you could have so many people who had interactions with that group, whether like you, they were vital executives who were creating content that brought people into Scientology, whether you were a parishioner or a staff member at a local church, which I've now come to to refer to as retail Scientology, Jeff.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
my new term for it is retail Scientology.
Retail. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the basic three card Monty at the quote unquote ideal org.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
so, but regardless, you have all of these people that have left and are speaking out. And yet, rather than address any of this or try to find some positioning, you say, curious. So, I
Yeah.
mean,
No,
is
it's insane. Yeah, it's absolutely insane. And I think, at one point I think you sent me your take on that about how that would have come about. And I can just picture the meetings at the Ent base with the executives
you
and
can.
them getting all tied in knots about this and going, oh, well, I think it's a good idea if we just say curious. But I think your point was a good one, is that they say, oh, look at all these SPTV channels and look at all of this stuff. People must really be curious about Scientology. So let's
That's
just run a campaign and say, are you curious? And
yeah,
they'll come flooding in. It's the most boneheaded
yeah.
thinking that I can imagine. But there is literally no one left at the Ent base that knows anything about marketing or advertising.
No, the only people that were left were the people that used to make your job and my job more difficult
Yes.
because they were so boneheaded. They were the people that you just had to say, just shut up, just
Yeah,
shut
yeah.
up, so you could get something done. Those are the only ones left. Yeah. So this whole the kind of germ of this curious campaign, it goes back to Anonymous, as this is at least my recall in 2008 when Anonymous rose up, and you had the beginning of the in-person protests, right? And you
Mhm.
had, that was February 9th, I believe it was, 2008. You had 8,000 people in 100 over 120 countries at once put on Guy Fawkes masks and went and protested. And
Yeah.
this was, and it was like the alarm bells went off. I mean, I was there. I got literally pulled out of the good side of the property where I was making films and training auditors and, the world's so lovely and look what we're doing to help mankind. And then all of a sudden I was in this meeting with, lawyers and David Miscavige and his girlfriend assistant and the security people, the what's her name, Karen, the no, what is her name, the OSA people, and the head of PAC
Yeah.
security.
Corinne Powell.
No, not Corinne. Corinne was there, but I'm thinking, what is her name? The girl the woman who's the head of PAC security. I
Oh,
can never remember her name.
yeah, I don't remember her.
Yeah, because she was PAC security, and she was when I was worked with you at the Pacific base and PAC. Things were just they were calm. They were so much calmer. I mean, yeah,
Oh, yeah.
yeah. I mean, there was a lot of bad stuff going on, but it was nothing like that. There weren't crowds of public outside with torches and pitchforks
Yeah. Yeah.
demanding,
Yeah. Exactly.
somebody. Yeah, so we were, and I remember Miscavige would keep talking about the fact he would do two things with this kind of phenomena. He would blame a lot of people. Well, first he would define it in his own way. So the reason this is happening is because you screwed up, you didn't do your job, and now I'm going to have to do it. And what you didn't do was you didn't put enough good information about Scientology out there in the world so that people would truly understand it. So therefore, you created a vacuum. This is what he would say. And from that, he came up with this. Remember this, Jeff? The phrase "fill the vacuum."
Fill the vacuum. Yes.
Fill
Yes.
the vacuum. And so people were wrong because they didn't fill the vacuum. The fact is, there was no vacuum. There was just what they had done
Yeah.
to piss everybody off. There was no vacuum, but he would say fill the vacuum. And so let's jump forward. SMP, Scientology Media Productions 2016 or whatever. And there's an internet marketing unit there. All of the internet stuff is run out of Scientology Media Productions, SMP. And they have you walk into that office and there's a 65-inch, 4K plasma, 4K LED screen. And it's a map, a Mercator map of the world. And it has every major Scientology, and data center mapped on it with numbers about how much of the internet activity is Scientology related. Now I'm saying Scientology related because everybody knows that Scientology related is like SPTV. There's a few 100,000 people, over a few 100,000 people that are have eyeballs on this and are focused to it. Well, that's Scientology related, right?
Yeah.
So you can take a picture of that board and you can show it at an event or, do it as a 3D animation, and you can use that to raise money from people. And you can say there has never been more interest in Scientology ever. People are curious. Yeah, they come to YouTube because they're curious just how bad it is. They're curious, whose blood is that spilled on the floor. They slow down a car accident because they want to know if anybody got their head chopped off. So that's kind of where curious came from. That's why I put the death, Dr. Death behind the thing, because it's like, that's pretty much what it is.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
Oh, I forgot to hide that comment. I need to hire a director to direct me on YouTube. Isn't that funny? It's really bizarre. So I'm going to look. I'm going to look at some of our comments. Do you have anything to add to that, Jeff? I mean,
No, I think that's a pretty good summary. When I was at the Int base, I would run into so much boneheadedness when it came to advertising and marketing. They did not understand the first thing about it. I mean, one of the most basic steps or building blocks of any marketing campaign is to figure out your public, who's gonna buy your product. And so I would go to some of the executives up there, many of whom are still there, and I would say, well, we've got to figure out who the public is for Scientology. And they would say, what do you mean? Scientology is for everyone. Everyone should be in Scientology. So our public is everyone. And I'm like, no, Scientology is not for everyone. Your grandmother is never going to get into Scientology. There are demographics, there are things that make people predisposed to getting into something like Scientology. And I spent quite a lot of time isolating that demographic of people that were most likely to get into Scientology.
Right.
And then concentrated on those demographics. And that was one of the key things that made that whole campaign work.
Right.
It was a targeted campaign. It wasn't just a broadshoot.
Yeah. You had you essentially targeted towards people who were watching TV late at night, who had their credit card sitting next to their bedstand, and wanted needed something, and so that was amazingly the demographic thing is. It's like, okay, you take a company like Coca-Cola, one of the biggest consumer brands in the world. And I was shocked to find out in my marketing studies that Coca-Cola, this is both huge and small at the same time. It's a small number of 3%, but that's how much of the fluid intake on planet Earth that Coca-Cola provides. They provide 3% of all the fluid intake. Now, if you and look at what they have. They have one of the most hugely successful companies in the history of the world. If you went to David Miscavige and said, "I have a plan to get 3% of the world consuming Scientology," you would probably get sent straight to Apex. But the fact of the matter is, that would be, I'm not going to do the math. It takes too long. But how many millions of Scientologists that would equate to?
That
3%.
would be huge. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that would be a good place to start. Let's start with just 1%. How do we get 1% of the world? But they don't do that. Yeah, I mean, I can think of examples of these demographic blunders. I remember working on some study materials. I was helping to edit some materials because Scientology had the harebrained idea that they were going to get their study technology, their technology for learning, quote unquote, into accepted by the public school system. And in order to do that, they'd have to adhere to certain standards, which of course makes sense. Like you'd have to, if it was going to be for the third grade, it would have to be written at a provable third grade level. So they did a bunch of research into all this. And one of the things that came up was that Americans read at, I think it's an 8th grade level on an average. Okay. And so I was told all of the stuff that you're writing, not the educational stuff, but films and this, that, and the other, you're going to start writing it all for 8th grade level. And I'm like, that's insane. You're not trying to get that public in. You're trying to get college educated people with money and can think. You want to write it at that level. The other people, they're not going to come in anyway. Why? They actually thought that if you do it at that level, it'll get everybody, but it doesn't. It kind of, so, you just get whatever it is you're targeting. Well, they're not going to get that, but I'm saying in theory as marketing. So
yeah. Well, when I was designing the book campaign, I found out that only 11% of adults in America read more than one book a year. And,
wow.
And the bulk of that is paperback fiction.
Right.
So when you reduce that down to nonfiction, it's even smaller. So we're not dealing with a huge audience. We're dealing with a more and more exact audience.
Right. And if you hit that audience and you were successful at it, you would begin to build something. But if you can't even hit that, you're going to be in big trouble. So that's what that, yeah. So, but then now get this. So, guys, when Jeff was doing this thing that he's talking about, what year did you start? I met you in the mid 80s, but you'd started doing this.
I started in that whole thing in 82, I think it was.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So this thing had been running for a few years by the time I came in.
And when I started, I knew nothing. But I recognized that I knew nothing, which was a big step. So I started educating myself.
Right. But let me just point out that this campaign you were doing, it was aimed at a public. It was actually aimed externally to the church. And what happened over the years, and we can walk through the steps of how David Miscavige you were one of the more egregiously abused people. And you were one of the first ones that I knew to leave and speak out and write a book. I'm not sure who wrote the first book, but you certainly wrote one of the very, very early ones. Yeah, and I must say that if they wanted to figure out how to sell books again, all they need to do is read your book. You put it in there. Like, could you imagine? They should send somebody to cramming and say, you need to study Jeff's book because he said how he did that. Right?
He said exactly how to do it.
He said how to do it right here. You did that for them. That's why I say you can't interrupt them, Jeff.
Yeah, exactly. Because they're making a mistake.
Yeah.
Well, before I left the Dianetics campaign, I wrote the whole thing up in a Sea Org executive directive, and it had 75 points on it of the things you needed to do to have a successful campaign. They still have that in the files. They could pull that out and do that, but they never will, because
No,
I'm
they
an
can't.
SP.
Oh no, you're hated. You are so hated. I'm not even
Yeah.
going to go through the list of the stuff I had to sit there and listen to about the things that you did and screwed up. Because anyway, I'm not even going to get into that, but they can't do it because they've already poisoned the brain trust that was responsible for the biggest influx of Scientologists in the history of Scientology back in the 90s. They've already poisoned that to the point that to them it's radioactive. And they are fragile people. As much as they say they're strong OTs, they're actually very very fragile. You can defeat a Scientologist with cheap perfume if you needed to. If you ever had one coming at you, you can just cheap perfume, and they're gone. They're done.
Yeah, they're out of there. Yeah, I don't know if I ever told you this story, but I was walking past the Portland org one time, which is right downtown here in Portland. And they had an e-meter stress test table out on the street. And this eager young Scientologist came rushing up to me, and he says, "Excuse me, sir, do you have any stress in your life?" And I said to him, "Not since I blew the Sea Org." And
nice.
He was like, gone.
Yes, yeah. It's nice that you had the opportunity to say that. Of course, now you have a TV, a shirt you can wear, and that kind of avoid this kind of repellent, right? It's kind of those people, by the way, folks, who are out on the street asking Jeff those questions, they're referred to as body routers because they route bodies into the organ. So you could say that T-shirt is a body router repellent.
Yes,
so,
absolutely.
Anybody's listening and needs to up their merch store positioning, you could sell T-shirts as body router repellents. Okay, so there's one other aspect to this thing, that the reason I brought up this point about that Jeff's campaign was aimed at externally at the public. By the time Miscavige was done dismantling that marketing campaign, which he did because he ordered it up to the base from LA, and it never, ever, ever regained anything close to the successes that it had had when Jeff and crew were running that thing in LA. And then I was later, a few years, not like a couple of years later, maybe a year, I was then sort of romanced into coming up to the base to direct a technical training film, which they'd never been able to do, and which Hubbard had declared without which Scientology wouldn't exist, wouldn't expand, wouldn't be able to continue on without these films. And so then Miscavige, basically, I mean, he couldn't handle the fact that you had all this success and he had nothing to do with it. Like it happened under his nose, behind his back. It just blew up, and there it was. TV ads everywhere, books flying out of bookstores. And he's like, no way. Get this unit up here. They all need to be working. I was told, I think by Caroline Mustard, that it was like, you guys, you need to stop being, you need to start being Sea Org members. You're down in LA, you're messing around. You need to come up here, get with the program. You need to stop working with professionals like Mitch Brisker because they're an outside influence, right? And then so, is this true what I'm saying? I mean, is this your experience?
Totally. Plus, David Miscavige absolutely hates anybody who is smarter than he is or who can do things that he can't do. He hates those people. And I was one of them.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, I think it's funny that you say that. This is a whole nother subject, but just in brief, one of the reasons that I hate to put it like I was well treated or whatever, because I wasn't, but I was not subjected to what the rest of you guys were. is because I wasn't in the Sea Org, and he liked bringing people in that knew what they were doing, because then he could say, look what I did. I went outside and I brought somebody in because you guys couldn't do your jobs.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
experienced this for years, and it's a strange thing to call it abuse, but when you're used to triangulate with people you like, okay, so I like Jeff, we're friends, we did a bunch of work together. We weren't like hanging out at each other's homes on Christmas, friends, but we were friends, and we had this bond for the work we did together. And then now I have this other guy saying to Jeff, people like him, for example, I had to hire this guy because you guys didn't do your job. And you can't speak out. You can't say, no, wait a minute, Dave. That's not true. Okay. A, you didn't hire me. They hired me. And I basically helped them with what they proposed. So therefore, what you're saying is totally false. But there were cases when I was doing work that people didn't know how to do. But I didn't like that. I felt it was really like, kind of like just banged on your character, your sense of humanity.
Totally.
Anyway, but yeah, so he dismantles this whole thing. And so this goes from the point, on the one end, you have Jeff's work, and he's honestly promoting to the outside world, bringing people in, and people are then, as a result, coming into Scientology. And then you have Dave at the other end of it, turning the whole thing into marketing just at Scientologists. So Scientology does not market anymore to the outside world.
No.
They don't know how to do it. And so all they do, even the ads they put on the Super Bowl, are intended to show at an event to support this fiction that will make people want to donate. It has nothing to do. And people look at it inside the bubble and they say, oh, this is the message dear Mr. Miscavige is broadcasting to the world. We feel so represented. Here, where's my credit card? I think I still have a little bit of room on one of them that you haven't completed. Oh, so anyway, that's the deal. It's become all internal marketing. So and
totally.
And then people look at the curious thing inside the bubble. Scientologists look at the curious thing, and they think, look at all the people that all the Scientology adjacent activity, all the interest, and they've in a genius move, they've turned it into the word curious, and now everybody's going to get it. And we're filling the vacuum. So,
in the final days of the Dianetics campaign, it became a way to get money from Scientologists, because they would go and they would say, here's this ad we put together and we want to put it on TV. So you have to give us money to put this ad on TV.
Right.
What the Scientologists don't know is that none of that money went to the ad campaign. It all went to Sea Org Reserves.
Right. You know? Yeah, right. No, that was eventually just used as a scam for raising money. But I had experienced that. I mean, that's kind of in the DNA. Before I ever worked for Gold, the first time I ever discovered what you're talking about, I did it. They called it a public service announcement, but it really wasn't. It was just a self-serving piece of propaganda. But I did this thing for a Citizens Commission on Human Rights, which is the Scientology founded and funded front group that is a supposed mental health reformer, right? Because that's a part of Scientology I was very much involved in. I designed the Industry of Death Museum and produced the films and blah blah blah. But early on, before any of that, I hadn't worked. I had worked with Jeff, but Jeff had now disappeared to the int base, and somebody from CCHR came to me and said, "We want you to do an ad for us." So I did this ad, and it was a very, very inexpensive ad to produce. And when it was over, they took the ad and they would go to different people and they'd say, this ad cost us $2,500 to produce. If you give us $2,500, you will have paid for this ad. So we can buy money on cable, right? Because they were going to play it on local cable. They did that over and over and over. There were literally like hundreds of Scientologists who were sold. They paid for the ad.
Yes.
They
Yes.
who each paid $2,500. And I asked the fundraiser executive of CCHR. I asked her about that. What? And she said, "Well,
Yeah.
you have to sell them something. You can't just ask for money. You can't just say, hey, give us money. You have to, like, if you need money for office supplies, you have to say, will you buy 10 boxes of paper clips. You always have to ask them for. I don't know where that came from. Do you have any idea, Chubby? This is the craziest thing.
It was just
like,
it was just something sexy to get their attention.
I guess
Yeah.
it's like the shiny object. You have to dangle a shiny. It's kind of like Luis Garcia. He had his suit against the church because he was asked to donate for the cross. They did the same thing with the cross, the Scientology cross on top of the flag building.
Oh, totally.
They literally, they just donated.
My brother was told that he was paying for that cross.
He paid for the cross. He bought the cross, right? He's the guy. Yeah, he's the guy.
He's one of the many. Yeah. Then he found out that that people paid for that thing over and over.
Yeah,
and over
that cross was like a slut at the prom. It was just everybody that had their way. Anyway, that's probably a bad analogy, but anyway. So that's the crazy world of Scientology marketing. So I'm just looking at some of these comments.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, here's one from Apostate Alex. Hey, Alex, how are you doing? Apostate Alex says, yes, Mitch, they've got to sell them something, and what they sell is lies.
Totally.
Right. Lies but they are packaged as something else. Yeah, that is funny. Okay, so let me just look through here and see what we've got.
Sure.
This is a little off topic, but I want to bring it up because I don't think it matters at this point. So Mr. Crow says, hey, Mitch, have you been following what's going on after Doug's passing? Crazy stuff is going on behind the scenes. And Dana at Rotting Jewels discussed last night. Check it out if you've got. I haven't. We were all saddened by Doug's passing. I hope there's nothing weird going on there because he certainly didn't deserve it. Doug lived maybe 5. Did you know about Doug, Jeff? Did you come across him?
I knew of him. We weren't friends.
But
of course I knew of Doug.
Yeah, he had a really interesting story, and he was certainly not shy about telling it. But Doug was one of the Celebrity Center acting crowd. He studied with Bobby Lyons. You knew Bobby. And so he and I knew a lot of the same people. He never made it to the base as an actor because he wasn't qualified, which doesn't surprise me. But I did one stream with him about actors and Scientology. It's a really crazy subject. And he lived literally like 5 minutes from me, and I never met him. We spoke on the phone a lot, and he was a really great guy, and I can't say enough about him. And I hope his passing isn't being sort of perverted the way people can tend to do that on the internet. Here's another one I want to bring up. Matthew Etienne Dumais question. I thought Laura sent a mic off to Jeff. What happened with that?
Yes. Yes.
What's that?
I have the mic. Laura sent me a mic. Laura sent me a shirt.
Nice.
Laura
because that's the golden run.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Of course,
she calls me Grandpa SP.
Well, yeah, because you knew her parents. I mean, I met her parents when I started working with you.
Yes. Yes. Very good friends of mine.
Yeah, they were great people. Damn. Yeah. Anyway, our best wishes. But anyway, that's great. She sent. There it is. Where's your mic? Where's the? Oh, fantastic!
It's right here.
Oh,
yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
I'm one of these people that has to eat their mic. let me see what I have. Okay, we have nice mug. Neil M says nice mug.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, I guess I should answer this. So Neil M wants to know, why wasn't Doug qualified to act in Scientology? Well, that he would not have been disqualified because of talent. That your lack of talent would get you disqualified because, I maybe didn't like your audition or somebody else didn't. What would disqualify you is, you had maybe a friend, you were connected to somebody on Facebook who once in a previous life said something untoward about Scientology. Maybe your cat was a Buddhist. Maybe, who knows, just
Yeah.
stupidest stuff. But maybe you were due for a sec check at your local org, because they would Gold would hold Celebrity Center responsible for making sure that the actors at Celebrity Center who Gold wanted to hire were quote unquote clean. In other words, they weren't up to anything silly, right?
No,
so
nobody's clean. Yeah.
Yeah, it would have been that kind of a thing. Like maybe they objected to something in his personal life, but certainly nothing to do with talent, because Doug was a talented actor.
Yeah.
Okay, I got some start comments here. I want to go through them. Okay, good. I'm telling you, Jeff, making the transition from ordering 30 people around my whole entire career to sitting here in front of the camera trying to manage everything on your own is really challenging. I think people who get into it, who've never had any experience in any aspect of media or production, are probably a lot better off, because it's, you can kind of, you can Chauncey Gardner it. I know that's just strange. If anybody ever saw Being There, it's the whole idea is that you're so oblivious that you're actually a genius.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, what do we got here? This is from Scott, aka CEO Bill. This is, are you curious? Yeah, about the former director of public book sales of the Logan, not about Elridge Tech. Hey, Alex, Scott's, I think he's flirting with you. I'm not sure, but he could be.
The Portland org made the mistake of putting a couple of curious flyers in our mailbox.
Oh.
And I was like, oh, no, you don't. And I took those flyers down to the Portland org, walked in and put them on the counter and said, don't you send this stuff to me. And then I said, am I curious? Yes, I'm curious how you keep the lights on with nobody coming in. Yeah.
I wonder if they have a stat. I wonder if they're keeping a stat for number of pieces of promo delivered to suppressive persons.
Yeah, they would be.
Yeah, but see, they would turn that into a good thing. They would say, we are filling the vacuum with Jeff Hawkins, because apparently he has a vacuum of good data.
Yeah,
so,
and apparently he's curious about things related to Scientology.
Yeah, he is. So that's exactly right. So what do we have here? This is from Peter Anderson, who says, curious, quote, similar words, strange, odd, peculiar, funny, unusual, bizarre, weird, eccentric, queer, unexpected, unfamiliar, abnormal, out of the ordinary, atypical, beat me up, Xenu, not. Yeah, and basically they're asking if you're curious. Like, are you curious? To them, it kind of only means one thing, and it only means interested. They're not interested in looking at any of the other very curious words that are associated with curious. But I guess when you're it's impossible to run kind of a brainwashing cult without yourself being to some degree very brainwashed. You can't do it as a sort of like a couple of Harvard business graduates, or Stanford. They're what made the balloons? Okay, watch this. Balloons. I love
That's
AI. Don't
crazy.
you love AI?
Yeah. Oh, it's wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
this thing has a mind of its own. Like, let's AIA to AIB. Let's just drop balloons when Mitch is least expecting it. But anyway, you're never going to see a couple of Stanford MBAs as a business program going, let's start a cult. They're never going to do it. They start chain restaurants. They do athleisure,
Yeah.
merchant, clothes, what branded
Design
as.
design an app,
Yeah,
something.
design an app. Yeah, exactly. Let's design an app to start a cult. You're never going to do it because people in their right minds don't. They just don't do it, even though in
Yeah.
some cases it's a great way to raise money.
Yeah. I have a theory about Scientology and their public face. I
Yeah.
think I think that they should embrace their weirdness.
Oh, yeah, I have the same thought. Oh my
Yeah.
God, the two probably top marketing people ever for Scientology are both having the same thought. They need to embrace it. Please, Jeff,
Yes.
tell me your idea for how would they embrace their weirdness.
I would just run an ad and it would say Scientology. Yes, it's weird, but it works. That would be out. That would get them
Oh,
so many
exactly.
people.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And it would shut people up.
Yeah.
Like that would cause a lot of people to have to change their conversation. My idea is a little more extreme than that. My idea is that at every classified org, these are the bread and butter retail Scientology outlets. Most churches have, altars and whatever, but Scientology has cash registers or credit card machines. That's kind of their little altar. It's a very retail operation. What they need to do is at all those classified organizations, they need to put a big statue of Zeno, right? And they need to say, you may think this is weird. You may think, South Park was making fun, but this really happened to you. This really did happen. And your body
Yeah.
really, and they should get off the whole confidentiality of the whole Xenu origin story of the body things. And they should just do it because I've got to tell you, like right now, people have estimated there's 25 to 35,000 people in Scientology. I even question if it's that many, if it's even more than 20. There are millions of people out there in America that would buy into that crazy stuff. I mean, just look at QAnon. Like
Well,
they
yeah.
could get so many people to believe that the story that their bodies are infested, and in a really strange way, it's this really weird explanation for a lot of man's strange behavior. It's not a correct explanation at all. For
But it's
dysregulated
an
emotion.
explanation.
It
Yeah.
is an
Yeah.
explanation. Like you can fit it in to a certain mindset and it'll
Yeah.
explain why your emotions become dysregulated. And it also most dangerously says, oh, that wasn't your thought. That was the
Yeah.
thought of a disembodied being that stuck to you. And you're like, oh, I'm so relieved. I thought I was crazy. It's just my BT.
It's just
But you
all
could,
these things. Yeah.
I could sell that shit, Jeff.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
all day long,
Well,
all day long.
yeah. Well, let me tell you, Portland, where I live, has an unofficial city motto of "Keep Portland Weird."
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But that and Portland has this great brand for
Yeah. Yeah.
being like I expect really edgy. Well, remember Portlandia, the show with what's this that? I
Exactly.
mean,
And
perfect representation.
there are these huge signs downtown, "Keep Portland Weird." And I always thought that the Portland org should put a big sign in the window and said, "We've been keeping Portland weird for the last 20 years."
Oh my God, they would go in.
They would
They
love
would
it. Yeah.
literally say that is so cool. Yeah, Miscavige doesn't understand that. He's too busy having like bespoke, platinum diamond encrusted cufflinks made,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
he can feel like the Pope. Anyway,
But again, I hope they don't do that because, per the Napoleon quote, I don't want to interrupt their campaign.
yeah, no,
Because, yeah.
but it's not going to work. So I think there is something that is very revelatory about approaching it this way. So because this is like, I mean, I know what you're saying. You don't want to interrupt your enemy when they have a gun to their own head. So
Yeah. But
But
here you have the two most successful Scientology marketers having that exact same idea.
Yeah,
You know?
I had the same idea. Like, why aren't they embracing this? This is what you would do in marketing. You would say,
Yeah.
laugh if you want, but Xeno is real. And if you don't believe it, come in and we'll go over it with you. There's many more times the number of people who would buy that than are currently going into Scientology. Yeah.
Yeah,
So anyway,
I would say things. That campaign, I would say things like, okay, you've tried all the usual solutions and they haven't worked. Something unusual.
right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it really isn't. In some ways, it's not weirder than other religions, but
Yeah. It's not that strange, but that's the reputation it has. Why not double down, you know?
yeah, that's totally. I think its greatest asset is its weirdness, as you said, and they're trying to pretend they're normal and they're failing. They should stop pretending they're normal, and as you say, embrace their weirdness. Okay, so we got a question from Duchess Diana. Hey, Duchess Diana, good to see you. Good to feel your presence here. A question, yes, what I thought, but does have a negative association with it. Yes. Okay, so what I thought, but does have a negative connotation with it, like something bad will happen. Exactly.
Yeah.
I think that ties into curiosity killed the cat, because
Yes.
you feel like there's this like a guy who is running a 3-card Monte, in Times Square, and he's putting these cards out, and the whole come on is, it may not be spoken, but the come on is, you're curious about what's under where the little P is, aren't you? I'll bet you're curious. Can you find it? That's what people think.
Yeah. They're going to get suckered in.
Exactly. Okay, here we go. Here's another one. April in Amsterdam. Good to see you, April. Thanks a lot for showing up here today, letting us be a part of your life. The second thing I think about with curious would be hard drugs, orgies, or some kind of taboo activity. Okay, well, I'm joining that cult. Okay, I want to go to the drug-addled orgy taboo cult.
Yeah.
Scientology was just too sex negative, but that's really interesting. There it is. It more proof that that is a really negative word. And when I drive, I see my doctor at Kaiser, which is across the street. Well, actually, he moved, but I go down to Kaiser for various different things. They're across the street from the complex where we used to work, where you were headquartered, and I would come for meetings. And I drive by that sign. And I'm just like, you've got to be kidding. I mean, that thing's been up there for years now. Is it obvious nobody's curious?
Yeah, exactly.
So Tambor Grable said, curious. I thought it was an ad for something else. That's interesting. So, yeah. Yeah, I wonder what you thought it was an ad for. Thanks for that, Tambler. Okay, just looking here. So I think this is in reference to, we were talking about Dianetics. Duchess Diana has this question: who is most likely to get into Scientology? And I think she means in terms of what is that demographic group.
Yeah. I spent a lot of time studying that and trying to figure that out. And at one point, and by the way, this was totally forbidden. I could have gotten a big ethics condition for this, but I took Scientology's mailing list, which is not supposed to leave the premises, and I took it to a market research firm and had through their computers and give me a demographic breakdown of who those people were. Scientology's entire mailing list. I got a demographic breakdown of, everyone who was in Scientology, and which was fascinating. And that's where I got the 25 to 35, some college, various things like that. But I came to call the target public, the seekers. They were people that were looking for something, you know. They were looking to change their life. They were looking
Right.
to, they had questions. They were like, okay, is this all there is, or is there something beyond? What's the purpose of life? Why are we here? You know, they were
Right.
asking questions like that. And so it's, in society, it's kind of the oddballs, the people that don't quite fit.
Right.
And they like to read science fiction. They like science fiction movies and TV shows, fantasy, things like that. And when I got around to actually buying media, I would go through those media buys with a fine-tooth comb. And I would say, Twilight Zone, absolutely. You know, Star Trek, yes. You know, place it on that. And then if it was something else, like, I don't know, Keeping Up with the Kardashians or whatever, nope. I'm not interested in people who watch that. I'm interested in people who watch old classic movies. Yes, advertise there. You know, it was very subjective, but
Right.
it was
But it
kind
was
of,
based on something. But
yeah.
don't you think the demographics have really shifted? Like if you got that today, um, I mean, I'll tell you an interesting story. So when I was, let me see, after I got busted at S&P and I went back to gold to form up another filming unit, because, that
Ah,
was like, quote unquote, my amends, right? Because,
ah,
which I did in record time. And we that unit, some of whom have never shot film, we were shooting, because the main unit that I had built up was no longer mine. And so when I went back, it was like, you're going to build a second unit. We need blah, blah, blah. So I did. And we did as good or better work than the other one. So, but when I was up there, let me see. I lost my train of thought here, but I'll get it. I'll get it back. Oh yeah. So when I was up there, I was still thinking about marketing, because mostly what drove me was the embarrassment, which is the same thing that drove me to want to participate with the church and direct the technical training films. That I was so embarrassed by them; they were so
oh,
horrible.
totally. Yeah, same
Yeah,
with me. Yeah.
yeah, and the marketing was so embarrassing, like the Curious and blah blah blah, and they just didn't seem to understand the public. But I was still operating on the public that you defined, which was, what is it, 18 to 34, or
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I was still, and it tended more male, right? Is
Yeah.
that true? Yeah, because
Slightly more
yeah,
male.
slightly, like 48, 52 kind of thing,
Yeah.
just slightly. So I was that was kind of around the time I'd kind of gotten back into gaming. I'd been really big into gaming when my kids were younger. I kind of used gaming to help them learn to read, because I'd make them read walkthroughs. I would download walkthroughs and I'd read walkthroughs to them. If you ever played a game, you know what a walkthrough is. And then at a certain point, I got them to start reading the walkthroughs themselves. They were already learning to read, but they weren't reading. They were playing too many video games. And to be honest, I was too.
Yeah.
But anyway, I was up at Gold and I was playing games and I got really interested. I hadn't played it in a long time. And I was I sort of settled on Halo, not Halo. I was playing Halo, but I kind of settled on Overwatch, because it's a really good game. And it's a very social game, and it has this an accurate reflection of a younger demographic, in terms of you've got sort of very humanistic players and toxic players and very educated players and players that maybe aren't so educated. So I came across an article. Everybody knows what Twitch is. Twitch is a platform like YouTube. A lot of streamers. It was actually probably the first most successful streaming platform in terms of streamers launching careers and making money. And Amazon had bought Twitch for $950 million. This is a lot of money for like a platform where people just went and streamed themselves gaming.
Yeah.
Even though you had what's his name, Ninja, who was making $1 million a month, 21-year-old kid, right? Who was a huge, ended up in the cover of Forbes magazine. That all sort of launched out of the Twitch zone. And I started wondering, maybe our current demographic is on Twitch. Maybe it's more. And so the people that own Twitch were so taken aback by the fact that they just got purchased for $950 million and almost $1 billion, and didn't really know why. that they commissioned a marketing study from. I mean, they still were part of the company. They just didn't own it anymore. They were all now super rich. So they commissioned this marketing campaign, not campaign, but this marketing from one of the country's top research to say who is watching this, because Amazon bought it because it's an ad platform. They could put ads on it.
Sure.
And that was the point at which everybody was looking to be Google in terms of being an ad platform. Amazon really needed an ad platform. Facebook had a pretty good one. They started a gaming thing, didn't work out too well. And what they found out about who it was exactly the public that Scientology would want to reach. They were college educated. They were higher income. They were more involved in their community in terms of altruistic, humanistic. They gave money to charities. They did free, kind of volunteer. They were very much into volunteerism. You'd see things like on Twitch. You'd see. I'm trying to think that the rapper from Canada, the black singer. I can't think of his name. Really super famous right now. Somebody help me out in the chat. Drake. Drake would all of a sudden spontaneously jump on with Ninja, and they would start a campaign like a fundraiser for some charity, and in 30 minutes they'd raise $100,000. So there was a lot of this stuff going on in the gaming world. And so I wrote it up. I compiled all this information, and I wrote it up to marketing people, executives, and so forth. And you know what the response was? I got a sec check. I got interrogated because I wanted to advertise Scientology to a bunch of losers living in their grandmother's basement, which is not who gamers are. So anyway, that's. Sorry for the long-winded story, but that's how well they understand their demographic.
Yeah, and that's what happens to anyone who tries to do something like that. They get mushed,
Yeah.
So, and they have gotten rid of anyone who could do any marketing,
Oh yeah, for sure, absolutely.
If I was to try to do that again, you're right. The demographic has changed because it's been so many years. So I'd have to do that whole thing all over again of figuring out what's the current demographic. Who are we talking to, really?
Yeah,
they will never do that.
Yeah. No, and you'd have to address the current public opinion, the state of the public opinion, and they're not going to do that because that's a defensive.
They don't want to know. They don't want to know.
Right. So, no, they don't. And it's unless they can use it to raise money from their existing public. So here's one, again, from Duchess Diana. She's curious to know where Shelley and others have disappeared to. That's another angle, Jeff. They could change the ad to say curious about where Shelley is. Come on in and we'll tell you. But
Yeah, exactly. Or tune into our special hosted by Shelley Miscavige.
Yeah, I think a few people would watch. Yeah, well, we're pretty certain she's up at the CST base up in Big Bear, California, and she's working away being a good little Sea Org member, and she's waiting for Ron to come back. And she wouldn't leave if they opened the gate. I mean, they wouldn't let her leave, but she wouldn't leave. I'm telling you, that's just my personal opinion. And the others, I don't know who you're referring to. I think she's referring to. He's in an old age home, being cared for, right? Which means he's not allowed to talk to anybody. And the rest of the guys like Guillaume Lazarev and Greg Wilher and all those guys, I mean, I know where they are because they were, I was there not that long ago. When they all got let out of the hole, they put them on a thing called the Analog Project. And basically all they do all day long is they scan or transcode all of the analog material that is Scientology has amassed, which includes documents, audio and video recordings. It's all they do all day long. is to turn these things into a digital format so they can store them in a computer. It's so sad. These were the titans. These were the lions. These were the oligarchs of Scientology. This was the management of Scientology. And it is Golden Era Productions today. It's a backwater production facility. The seat of power is at Scientology Media Productions, and Miscavige runs it like an oligarchy. And so that I hope I've satisfied your curiosity. I should do tours. I should do tours of the LA production facilities, except it's so boring.
Yeah.
I think we pretty much handled it. Yeah. So. Yeah, I forgot to start this thing. So let's go. I just want to take a look here. Here, let me just bring this up. I'm going to read this quote. Adam wants to know, what if the COS stars were so entranced by heterosexuality and its many mores and folkways? I'm going to have to guess, excuse me, at what that means. I'm assuming that COS stars means the celebrities were so entranced by heterosexuality and its many mores. Oh, yeah, I guess so. I mean, I coined the phrase, Jeff. I coined the phrase "flaming heterosexual" because as a heterosexual person who emphasizes their sexuality, right? And in Scientology, not so much in this year, but among Scientologists, there's a lot of, I'm a male and I'm proud to be a male and I'm a female. It's gender is an important thing, and being the correct gender and adhering to the correct gender norms is very important to do in Scientology.
Sure.
This is rampant in and out of the cult. I mean, I know people even on YouTube, Scientologists who speak out, who are people that I would consider to be flaming heterosexuals, in that they really push their genderness, like I'm really a guy, or I'm very feminine, and they do it in a way that is just sort of annoying.
Yeah,
but don't give me. Okay, so sorry about this, Moon Age Daydream. Mitch, I asked a question earlier. Has a question at the start. Let me just jump back to the start.
Yeah.
I don't know. Okay. I don't see Moon Age Daydream, but I see a couple other things. I'm still going to look for it. Scott, AKCOB, Bill said earlier, the curious slogan makes me feel like Scientology is trying to accost me in the men's room at the Port Authority bus terminal. Okay. So I think that's the number one quote. I'm the quote of the day. Let me see if I can find this from.
Yeah, I didn't see it. I'm just going through.
Yeah, so sorry about. Maybe you could ask the question if you're still here.
Yeah, ask again.
Yeah. So. Or if I find it later, I'll be sure. I'll shoot you an email, or so if I'll answer it, or. Here's a comment worth noting. Purple Groovy 69 says, "It's amazing that DM has a job that allows him so much time to bitch and gossip about all the people that are actually doing the work." Oh, yes. No, it is one of his great, and I think Jeff is having, I can see your thought bubble, Jeff. I think Jeff's having the same thought. One of Miscavige's great skills, talents that I kind of admire him for, his ability to convince everybody that he's overworked.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, at the end base, he insists that every decision or every ad or anything has to come to him personally to approve.
Right.
Everything goes to Dave to approve. So then, and he has a big conference room in the middle of the RTC building, and it would get stacked up with binders and boxes, just, stacked all around the conference room table. And then he'd be like, you see what I have to deal with here? You guys are so incompetent. everything's coming to me for a decision, and you see how overworked I am, you know.
Yeah,
He
he would try to convince you that that was his daily load.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
the shit had just been there.
Look how much I have to deal with. Well, he's only dealing with a fraction of it. Most of it he just ignores or just rejects. You know,
Right.
I mean, one of the things at the Ant Base is if you send something to COB, it's likely to get a reject. And not just a reject, but a punch in the face, you know?
Yeah.
It's going to be violent as well as rejected, you know?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I've been sort of marginalized because I had a different experience, but I think you would appreciate that even though my experience was different than that, it was it had its own it had its own negative attributes. It's just it was important. It was important to keep me as and for many years I was perfectly willing to step out and defend Miscavige to the press and so forth. So he was very good at keeping a couple of people in a clean room, right? And so the blood splatter didn't get into the clean room, and then he could trot those people out. And you know, I mean, I remember sitting down there with Tobin and Childs from when they came out to the base to do the portrait of a cult leader. I don't remember what they called it, but they did before they did the big expose, the Truth Rundown. They did this a portrait on Miscavige, and it was okay. It was not, and from his perspective, it was kind of neutral. They were a little tough on him, but they didn't rip him apart yet. But they were allowed to come out to the base. I spent 2 hours talking to those guys, and then I got trotted off to the clean room again. And when you realize that you're just like a tool, you know what I'm saying? And you're just like, whoa, what? So and then the years of having to compartmentalize because you're being told that people you knew that you really liked, Jeff Hawkins, Mark Headley, Claire Headley, Mike Rinder, people that you really liked, and you knew they were the people that you had actually gravitated towards and worked with, that they're SPs, right? That somehow their soul had just darkened and they had become SPs. So you put that in a box and you fucking put a 1-ton rock on it, and you just keep that in there. And then you have this other box, which were your actual feelings and perceptions for the person. And you keep that shut and you just try to survive. And eventually those lids come up flying open and you have to deal with it. And it's like, oof. Jeff, you were the first person I called when I really made the decision that, not just to leave Scientology, but to leave and begin to reconstruct my story, my life, my whatever it was. You were actually the first person I called.
No, that's great. That's great. Yeah.
Okay, so here's a question. This person, Moon Age Daydream, maybe this was the question. Who wrote the original hats? By that, I'm assuming this person was a staff member, because the word hats means the definition of one's activity for their job.
Yeah,
right?
one's duties.
Like my hat as a director was to say, where is my goddamn tea? Like that was pretty much it. That's all I had to do. And then, because the script supervisor, she'd say, okay, here's what we're doing next. No, it was a little bit more than that. Who wrote the original hats for all the media roles for the film unit? Did LRH make them up, guess, or get pros to write them? That's an interesting question. There was a unit, you may know a little bit, this is more of an inside thing, Chip, but there was a unit that was kind of responsible for writing up hats, and they would write them up, right? Wasn't there? But
there may have been something in compilations or somewhere.
Yeah, they would put together hat packs, because I remember there was a woman who was responsible for putting together hat packs, pulling together all of the different references. I know in terms of the cine crew, the film crew, that in terms of the film crew, sorry, I'm trying to run this. I got to get a director as soon as I'm making money again. I'm going to hire a YouTube director. I'm going to actually, you know what I'm going to do, Jeff? Here's how I'm going to make the money. I'm going to go on YouTube and I'm going to start a school for how to direct YouTube videos. So People need, you know,
great,
it's,
yeah.
I mean, I don't even have a moderator. If anybody wants to volunteer to mod for me, let me know. I'm not super big on modding, but I think it is important. I forgot on this stream, Mark Headley mentioned to me that it's a really good idea to only let subscribers comment because there's a lot of crap going on right now, and people who subscribe are less likely, right? People who hate you are more likely to subscribe. At least you can get a subscription. But I do know, with respect to the original film crew, that basically L. Ron Hubbard created those hats. You could tell because he used certain things like script girl. Nobody says script girl, right? That's like from the 40s. And he came up with the hat, the shoot crew chief, which doesn't exist in the film industry. Yeah, and so, but he did those based on some textbooks that he'd, you know, the sort of basic film school syllabus books that he came up with. I say that because I recognize them from books I had in college, and he just sort of then came up with. Oh yeah, Alex is modding for me. Alex, I know that I had. Hey Alex, my mod. That gives me such a warm feeling. Thanks, Alex. Sometimes I don't have a mod, but Alex is fantastic. He has been so helpful. It's amazing how you make real friends after you leave Scientology. And by that, I mean people who genuinely want to help you and that you can confide in. You can tell them things and they're not going to write a KR and turn it in like as a way to help you.
Yeah.
So, oh, cool. Okay, I didn't know that. Alex was just giving me a little bit of inside dope. I'll share it with you. Sometimes comments that are removed or users that are timed out on YouTube still appear in StreamYard, so you'll still see them, but we can't. Okay, great. That's good to know. Thanks for that, Alex. And would you call me later because I really need to talk to you. I need to talk to my mod. Okay, here, this is an interesting one. This is from Neil M. Apparently, the new trend is to go to Scientology recruitment centers and yell and harass the low-level Scientologists. Yeah, I guess there really is no such thing as a recruitment center in Scientology. Every church is a recruitment center. I mean, that's just a function of every Scientology organization is to recruit. But yeah, we've seen a lot of this. I mean, you know, this guy, the what's his name, the guy who's doing the First Amendment audits, Scientology, blah blah blah. There's a couple of these guys that do these First Amendment audits who have turned towards Scientology. They never have had anything to do with Scientology, and they're blowing up. They're literally blowing up. Like, it is becoming a cottage industry. First it started with observing the cops. Right? I mean, this was covered on CNN, that people were going around with cameras and covering the cops. And obviously it was started by because there was a kid who was lucky enough, or fortunate, I should say, enough to be at the George Floyd murder. And so we had documentation of that, and that changed everything. So now, but this is great because this is what is called a reckoning. There's a word for this. That's when you can't do your bad shit anymore without people seeing it and reporting it. So we're kind of having this reckoning now, and it's public opinion. It's not just you and me and a bunch of other people, Jeff. It's it's actual public opinion, which is really amazing. Okay, I've got to embarrass you here. Okay, Buffy Lynn says, "I love Jefferson. I really like when you have guests on. Always interesting stories." I'll let you respond to that.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, yes, we try to be interesting, you know.
Yeah, it's like we should be out playing bocce ball or doing what older people do, but we kind of refuse because our generation, we were never going to grow old, remember?
Oh yeah, no, we were
never going to
live forever.
We were going to be dead when we were 35. I don't know about where you were, but that was it. But we were never going to become the establishment. We were never going to become the man.
No.
Ever.
No.
So what you have is a bunch of aging hippies, or hipsters or whatever. I think they call that Malibu, actually. If you've ever hung out in Malibu. Sterling could tell you all about that because he works at Malibu. Okay, so this is okay. So I want to put this up. Love Fu Kitchen. Thanks for being here. I keep saying that some of these First Amendment guys could do with a talk from Wise Beard Man, like Anonymous had. I'm not sure how helpful all the shouting and screaming at cult members is. Okay, look, this is just it's off topic, but I'm going to answer this. I think you're actually right because the Wise Beard Man thing was a little different because he was saying to Anonymous, and believe me, I know this whole story well because I was literally on the inside working against Anonymous and doing propaganda and PR and figuring stuff out. But what Mark Bunker did was he said, look, you guys are, and he was speaking to the original Anons who started the whole thing. They said, you guys with your, your DDoS attacks and your black faxes and all of this stuff that you can do that you're doing on your computers, it's illegal. What you need to do is go out into the daylight and protest because that's legal. And if you don't, they're going to shut you down. So the people that went out into the sunlight, into the daylight with masks on to protest, they weren't the original guys who were doing all the, because the original guys would never do that. Anonymous never, they don't do, they're like Eastern European hackers, man. They bring down a power plant from the computers. The whole point is to wage war on the internet. Not so that's an interesting phenomenon because the hackers that started that whole thing as a joke, they didn't realize that they were tipping the rock over, and from under that rock, there was this. Maybe it's a bad analogy because it was the good guys that were under the rock. That there was so much hatred against Scientology that they were like a kid playing with a match in the forest, right? They were like a kid who was like burning ants in the forest with a magnifying glass and then set the entire forest on fire. So it was pretty crazy. But I do agree. I don't think it's helpful. It's not illegal what they were doing. So Bunker would be telling them to stop doing one legal thing and do another legal thing. But the harassment, they think the people doing it are insane. So it's not helpful.
Yeah, I think his point was all that harassment and negativity and shouting at Scientologists was not going to get the product.
No.
That you had to be a bit more
right.
subtle.
It's not.
That.
Yeah, it's not. Well, it's not going to do it. But I think in this case, it's creating content that's bringing awareness, right? Because people will watch somebody, yelling, cult, don't go in, cult. They're going to steal your family. They're going to steal your family. Yeah, that it doesn't help to get anybody out, but boy, does it help to keep people from going in.
Oh yeah,
and that's really important. So I think it's a little bit. So I'm a little on the fence about it. I wish they would do it differently, but I like seeing them talk to the tourists at that's a test center on Hollywood Boulevard, and it's beautifully designed.
Yeah.
I think doing that is good. I think some of the yelling and getting in people's faces is, especially
it kind of drives them in to make a shell and that's
it makes them dig in. And also the one thing that I'm concerned about, like there's a lot of children in Scientology. Like I'm not talking, the Sea Org doesn't recruit children anymore, but Scientologists have kids and kids go with them. And I think that's frightening to children to see that kind of stuff.
Oh,
so I kind of, that's not helpful, to traumatize kids. I mean, I haven't seen any kids in those yet, but I think about that. Like if you're walking into an org with, your 10-year-old child, and there's some guy yelling, don't go in there, don't go in there, don't go in there. You've been brainwashed. It's a cult. It's a cult. I mean, yeah, do it. It's completely legal. It helps, then they put that on TikTok and 100,000 people see it. And that's great. But I think about kids being traumatized by it.
Sure. Yeah.
And they're already traumatized enough being in Scientology. So they don't.
Yeah, exactly. They've got plenty of trauma going on.
Yeah, is this DLM says that he shouts at Asians like they know Spanish. Yeah, that's a little weird. Yeah, LA is a very multicultural place, and it's hard to keep track of who speaks what, regardless of what they look like. Inappropriate Effort says, "Hey, how are you doing? Good to see you today. She says, I'm echoing a little bit. It's funny. I feel a bit echoic. Not sure what that's all about, but thanks.
I'm not
for bringing that
hearing
up.
any echo. So
Yeah, but I wanted to, it was an excuse to say hi to her. She's reached out a few times and definitely worth having as a supporter. Oh, look, we got a little message from Mark and Janice, our Scientology stories, peeling the onion. Two wise men are here.
Yes, pull on our beards, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think we're so wow. Hey Jeff, we're almost in an hour and a half. I'm going to bring this to a controlled landing. I just want to say that you guys have been fantastic. I'm just seeing if there's any last things we might want to. And what is this here? Let me put this up here and read it. Swedish Schlina. Rune as Guy said, no, this is an intersocial relationship going on here. So thanks for sharing it. I'm doing well as possible. I'm getting carrier 18 years in and doing better than most. However, heat plays havoc on me. But anyway, so yeah, that's just some friends sharing a little message.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So listen, I'm going to hey Jeff.
Yeah,
you might be interested in joining me for something. I'm going to be doing some with Jeff Levin. I'm going to start a series talking about the art series.
Oh,
and
nice.
I'm now announcing this publicly on YouTube for the first time, and because it's very little known about this outside of Scientology. It's never discussed because there's very few people on YouTube that can talk about it. But you and I had to live with Hubbard's writings on art.
Had to memorize it. Yeah.
Yeah. And people don't realize the degree to which L. Ron Hubbard tried to redefine and own the entire world of creativity. This is one of the most important aspects of humanity, is the ability to create art. And he tried energetically to take that over. And for many of his followers, he did. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I'm going to be doing a series on the art series, going through them and talking about them. And I'll contact you about that. Yeah, because I'm sure you would have a lot to say. You should participate in that. So if you want to take a look at them, if there's any particular one that you want to that you feel particularly close to your heart. I mean, to me, a couple of them. Starting with Hubbard's definition of art, which I'm not going to get into it now, but it's one of the most batshit crazy things in the history of humanity. So that's something to look forward to.
Yeah, it would also be interesting to go through the marketing series.
Yeah.
You know?
I didn't pay much attention to the marketing. I'm trying to think. I mean, a couple of things, but yeah, it would be definitely. That was the green on white, right?
Yeah.
The policy letters are green on white. That was the color of money on white. Yeah. Because I mostly dealt with the technical stuff and making training, which was, the technical bulletins, which are the color of blood on white. So Hubbard's two favorite colors were the color of money and the color of blood. So
totally.
So yeah, look forward to that. I'll bring Jeff on. We'll do some stuff on art. I'm also going to be bringing Jeff Levin on. Maybe the three of us. Jeff. That
would be great. Yeah.
Fortunately, you guys spell your names differently, so it'll be a little less confusing visually, because you're Jeff with a J and he's Jeff with a G. And okay, so with that, we're going to end this. I want to really, really thank Jeff Hawkins, Jeff with a J Hawkins, for taking the time to be with us today, and thank you all for coming by. And we're gonna see you soon. Take care, everybody.